Hi, I'm Grant Salvin. I thought I'd make a quick video um, about trading. I just want to explain some things that I find useful in trading. Excuse me, I cough a lot, so um, yeah, sorry, that's just how it is. So, um, I'm a smoker, so I've what I've done here, I'm on TradingView. I've got the TradingView app on my phone. I use it on I got a Samsung Fold, Z Fold 4, and I find it's really, it's a, re- it's a very good way to use TradingView on the go. Um, I don't really look at charts that much as much, I don't look at charts as much as I used to. Um, so yeah, no, I thought I'd just make a quick video just in case anyone finds it useful, really. Um, some methods that I find are really, really good for trading. So I posted some videos on my Facebook. There's a guy called Anil Mangal. His name's spelled Anilmangal. And he's got a YouTube channel called Pro Wave Trader. And I used to, I learned a lot from him years and years and years ago. And yeah, he's very good. He's very good. I don't agree with everything he says, but I have learned a lot from him. And um, but you know, I think in some ways I'm better than him. That might sound quite big-headed of me, but um, yeah. I mean, I posted his video. He's talking about forex and yeah. I mean, he's got it's pretty good advice. I don't really trade forex, to be honest, because Elliott wave doesn't really work that well with forex, and forex charts move very strangely. I mean, if you look at if you it doesn't matter if it's two currency pairs, or if it's Bitcoin versus Ethereum. If the kind of charts I look at is like this one, Bitcoin versus the US dollar, or Tether US, which is Tether US it's the same value as the US dollar, basically, isn't it? That's why it's called Tether US, because it's tethered. It's a digital currency that's tethered to the value of the US dollar. That's why it's called Tether US. Anyways, I've started a new chart. I've started a new chart layout on TradingView here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you something I find very useful. Okay, so I've got the volume on here, and if you look here, you can see that the volume was highest back at the beginning of 2023. This is actually about the time I bought into Bitcoin again. See, I bought Bitcoin a long, long time ago, and I lost all my money. And I worked as a van driver, and I was poor for ages, and my mum died, and I inherited her money, and then I bought a load of Bitcoin, and I made a lot of money. And I see, back in the day, I used to do very, very risky trading. I used to use highly leveraged trading. I used to do 20x leverage on Bitcoin futures contracts, and that was some really scary shit for a guy who had barely any money. Um, and I'm surprised I'm still alive after that, to be quite honest. Anyways, um, yeah. Um, so obviously, all I'm talking about, I'm not encouraging you to get into trading. This isn't me trying to tell you that it's a good idea. I'm basically just sharing what I think are useful tips if you are a trader, if you find it interesting. This is just educational. It's not It's not investment advice or anything like that, obviously. Um, so, yeah, the volume, obviously, I like using the Binance chart because Binance has good volume. And so, obviously they're going to have a better, an exchange that has high volume, their charts are going to be of a better quality, pretty much. Um, so, I like to look at Binance, um, and I like to do it against the US dollar because obviously there's more volume, So, yeah, I'm not really that concerned about the volume um, indicator. So, what I really want to put on here is simple moving averages. So if I can find out here, we've got indicators. And then if I go to SMA, if I can do that, SMA, right? Simple moving average. And then do it again, and again, and again. I hope that's given me, yeah. So I've got 4 moving averages, which is what I want. Simple moving averages. And I go to the properties, inputs. So I've got inputs. I think the length. So if I change the length, so this one. Whoops. Oh no, hang on. Yeah. Okay. So if I go to, I'll set that to 20. And then go OK. And then the second one, that'll be 50. What I need to do is I need to change the color on these as well, because yeah, let me pick some color. Oop, I'll tell you what, I'll keep the 20 as blue, and then the and for the 50, pick, I don't know, green, that'll do. Okay, and then we got the third one. Okay, for that I'll pick yellow. Inputs, stick that to 100. I mean, these are the best numbers for doing this. The 200 moving average is probably, it's probably the most important one in this. So I like that one to be red. And then stick that to 200. Okay, so now, so I've got this on the 3-day time frame. So I've got it on the 3-day time frame. If I go to, let's just look at it from for 1 month. I don't think yeah, obviously, well, if I look at it for 1 month, you can see the 20 moving average, the 50 moving average, and a bit of the 100 moving average. So if I stick it maybe to 2 weeks, okay? So that's the 2-week moving average. Now, obviously you can see that Bitcoin has dropped. And you can see where it's dropped, right? You can see very clearly where that has dropped. So this is the 100 moving average. What does that mean? Well, what it is it's like the way it's calculated, it's something like, the previous 100 bars, the 100 candlesticks, these are called candlesticks. So the previous 100 candlesticks, this is the average of 100. And this one is the average of 200. And this is the average of 50. And this is the average of 20. And obviously, moving through the different time frames, it will look different. And this shows you, good support levels. So this shows you, it gives you a good indication of levels, interesting price levels. So if I look at the 1 week, okay, you can see it's down at the 200 moving average, okay? So, and up here you can see how the 20 has crossed below the 50 moving average. And so, really what we want to see price coming back above to a higher level. So, these are useful ways of viewing the chart. What more can I say? Sorry, I can hear some drilling in the background. That's not me. Right. So that's the 1 day chart. Let me have a look at maybe the 3 day. 3 day, 1 week. Before we looked at the 1 week. So I think the 12 hour. If you have a look at the 12 hour. So obviously, prices have dropped, and you can see that the 20 moving average is just above the current price. And obviously, we want to see price moving up. So, it's not clear yet whether price is going to... It's not clear whether, price could maybe come down a little bit and then take off. So, it'll be, it's, where's all my, hang on, close that. What's going on here? Yeah, okay. So, basically, I'm just trying to point out that these are, these are useful indicators, just simple moving averages with these particular values. You can use different values, but these are the best in my opinion. I mean, there are two other indicators which are quite useful. I'll just briefly mention them. There's MACD, which is spelled MACD, and the other one is stochastics, or it's called RSI. And I'm not an expert with using those, but I have some experience using them. They can be kind of useful, but I wouldn't, they're not that important really. Take a look at them if you want to. So yeah, obviously when trading, most of the times you want to have a specific time frame. Well, most people would say have a specific time frame that you're looking at, and then maybe you have one big, I tend to look at I used to do a lot of trading. I used to look at all the time frames. I would look at the 1 minute chart, the 5 minute chart, the 20 minute, half an hour chart, the 1 hour chart, 4 hour, 12 hour, 1 day, 3 day, 1 week, 1 month. I look at it all, but you have to really be aware. You want to really know the chart very well. I mean, obviously the other, obviously I use Elliott wave theory. So, it's very easy, if you go on Google and you search Elliott wave, um, it's quite easy to get guides or buy a book on it. I actually I found a guide on the internet, and it was probably about 20 pages long, a PDF file about 20 pages long, and it explains the basic rules of Elliott wave theory. Um, it's not that hard to learn it. It's not hard to read it and try to learn the rules, but it's applying it to the chart, which is that's the part that's really difficult, and that's the thing that really takes a lot of experience. um a lot of people, they just sort of pick it up, and it's like it's like guys, they learn to drive a car, they pass their license, and then they go on the road and they want to drive it 120 miles an hour, thinking it's a good idea. It's kind of, people do make a lot of stupid decisions, but I've done it before. I've made dumb decisions before. I know that. um but the fact was, when I was learning to trade, I didn't actually have a job, and so it really forced me to take it really, really seriously. um and it was very, very stressful, and I spent a lot of time really trying to figure this stuff out. I tried really, really hard to do that. um yeah, I mean, the thing about, obviously forex, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's forex or a commodity like, gold or Bitcoin. um it doesn't really, oh, um in all, in these charts, you'll always find, there'll be like a, an ABC pattern, right? You're always going to have a, this ABC type of patterns. You see them like, here's an ABC. Well, obviously you get, there's this fast move, and there's this slower sideways movement, right? And then there's this breakout, that's like an ABC type of move. Yeah. You can learn all about that in Elliott wave theory. It's very easy. Go find yourself a guide. If you don't know it, I highly recommend. If you are a trader, it's probably not a bad idea learning it. But what's my current thoughts about what's my Elliott wave count on here, on Bitcoin? So what's that then? What's my Elliott wave count on Bitcoin? I'll show you quickly. So I want a higher time frame. So this is the 1 week chart. Okay. So what's my Elliott wave count on Bitcoin? Yeah. So I'd say, so the beginning was, it was ages ago, right? Whenever it started. This is 1, and this is 2, I would say, and 3. Right, just put 4 and 5 there. So basically, this is what I think is happening with Bitcoin, right? And it does look, this looks really strange, but this is what I believe, right? So I think basically, it's going to be something like this. It's got to go a lot higher. Obviously, what I'm mainly concerned with is, this is 1 and this is 2. Normally, right, 2 should be lower. A lot of people probably thought, well, that's 2. Yeah, a lot of people would probably think, that was two or that was two. And, but the thing is that if you count this, it looks really, really strange. It doesn't, there's something bizarre about it. And what I would argue, because obviously wave two is a correction. Yeah? Wave two is a correction. I mean, if I zoom in, if I get rid of this, look, if we zoom in, right, look, go all the way back, come back here, right, look, you see how this move up to 20,000, right? That is an impulse wave. It had a good run up, and then it had a big drop, and then it came back, and it came down, and it almost came, do you know what I mean? It went down almost, what, 90%? Or something like that, 80%, 90%. And then, it's had this massive, it's been going all over the place. It's been a massive roller coaster. But you notice it's gone up and down. How does Elliott wave? I mean, obviously, if you don't know anything about Elliott wave, you're probably going to be wondering what the hell I'm talking about. An impulse wave is usually like this. It goes one, you got a two, and a two can usually come, it can come back, it can retrace, maybe like 70%, 80%. And then you get a longer wave three. This is another impulse wave. And the thing is obviously you can count, because obviously, this is an impulse wave, this bit. So that's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you've got like an A, B, C. And then it'll be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then, obviously the 3 is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's an impulse wave. An impulse wave always has 5 waves in it. So it'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like that. And then you get another correction. And then it'll take off like a rocket again. That's in Bitcoin, it's always the 5th wave, the top one, which is going to be the longest. That's where you get this parabolic climb. But the thing is, if you look over here, right, this is like, it goes up, and then it's got this big correction in the middle. It's more like an A, B, C rather than a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, I noticed this about Bitcoin, and I noticed this doesn't look right. It doesn't, this is not an impulse. This is not real. This is not really the same sort of move up that we had here back when it went up to 20,000. This is not the same. These are different. And so what I really believe is actually, because Bitcoin's so bullish, what we're really looking at is, this is the top of wave 1, and all of this is wave 2. And so, so here, this is where I've drawn here. This is 1, and this would be 2. But because this is so bullish, it's gone up like 1, and then it's obviously, it just keeps going up, even though it's in a correction. And the thing is this thing is like, this thing is taking off like crazy. This is gonna fly, it's gonna go so high. That's the thing about Bitcoin, right? It is gonna go extremely high. It's gonna make a lot of money. In my opinion, right? So, is there really anything more I want to say than that? I mean, I don't know, actually. Yeah, I mean, I'm expecting it to, this is what's happening at the moment with Bitcoin. This is, I'm really interested to see what happens with it. Not just the fact that, obviously I got a lot of money in it, but the fact is that, now it seems like it's at a critical point where, it seems like it really should go up. If it's gonna carry on being as bullish, if you know what I mean by bullish, the fact that it's a very it's about to go up in value a lot. That's what I mean by bullish. It's at a critical point, I would say, and it has to go up quite soon. So what's my account on? Obviously, I said this is all correction, okay? And so, obviously counting this is really awkward. I mean, it's not easy. It's very difficult. I mean, you wouldn't believe how many times I've counted Bitcoin. I've done wave counts so many times and changed my counts and said, actually, you know what? How can this make sense? Let's see how we can, trying to figure it out. Like, what is really going on with this? And believe me, I've scratched myself bald, I think. I've scratched my head so much, I'm going bald. Anyways, let me, I mean, if you want to learn to be a trader, don't be surprised if you go bald. Seriously. Anyways. So what's my account on this? Well, the thing about corrections is obviously, well, you get ABC. ABC is a very, that's a simple correction, right? So here's a simple ABC Elliott wave correction thing, right? But obviously, what else we get? So we got, what's this? Elliott double well, it was WY. What's that? Hang on. The WXY. All right, so WXY. Yeah, I'm not sure what that's supposed to be. I think it's just, this is a different label basically, but obviously, like an ABC, so that's the starting point. You got a, well, it'd actually be the other way around actually if I go back. Right, come on, for fuck's sake. What? Here, just close. Yeah, but just stop that. So like an ABC correction would be so obviously price goes up. For instance, price goes up, right? And then you'd have so like 0. No. Oh, right. So A would be there. That would be that would be C or something, right? So that would be the start. That would be the start. A goes down, B goes up. C. That's not really what it is, though. That's not the yeah. So complex corrections. Okay, so this is so WZ, okay, so that's probably the one I'm looking for, right? So, we had wave 1 came up to here, right? So the correction started from the top, right? And it would have come down. And then so you would have had a W, which I would say would probably go to about there. And then you had like an A, B, C. So this, so obviously the first corrective wave came down. It came down from the top. You got a W. I call that W. And then the X wave is an ABC, right? It's its own ABC, right? So you got the first bit that goes up here, and then it has a sideways movement of, so an A, B, and then the C wave took off like a rocket, right? So we labeled that X. And then, so after X, we got the Y. So this came down. And then it corrected to the upside again. And then it came down again. Right? So I would probably say, somewhere around here, you could call that maybe Y. And then you've got this big move up again. So, I'd probably say something like that. It's probably, that's the X, right? And here's Z, right? So that is really crazy looking, complex wave 2 correction, right? Wave 1 came up here to 20,000, and wave 2 ended at about 60,000. That would basically that's my analysis. That's my Elliott wave count on Bitcoin. Okay. Um, that will be wildly different from most people's. And now, other people, if you go to look at what other people say, I don't look at other people's analysis. I used to, when I first started trading, I used to go on TradingView. I used to search all the different traders' charts. I used to look at all their different methods. I used to try out all their different strategies, and I tried all kinds of stuff. But I taught myself how to do it for myself. And that's why I don't really look at other people's analysis. I posted those videos of Anil Mangal on Facebook. Um, it's there if you want to have a look. So yeah. So what's using Elliott wave. Okay, so the rules in Elliott wave is that wave one. So that's wave one. It went up to 20,000. Okay. And then the rule is that wave three, it's usually, how would I predict the price move? Okay, so if I wanted to know, where's price likely to go, based on my analysis, what would I guess, right? So I want to use something called a Fibonacci extension, which is this, right? So I need to set this at 0, if I can get there. 0. So about 0, doesn't really matter too much, but about 0, yeah. And then 20,000, which is about there, right? And then, oh no. Well, I'm going to change this a little bit, right? So I'm going to set that to about 60,000, where it's dropped to. Okay. So what is Fibonacci extension? Well, the number I'm looking at, 1.618. So that's usually the extension that we see for wave 3 in Bitcoin. Okay. Wave 5 can extend a lot more than that. It depends. I mean, obviously, this is just theoretical, right? But obviously, I wave 1 finished there, but really, because price went so much higher, what I would do is actually take this and set that price wherever that high was, right? So it's at that level, which was about $125,000. Okay. And so if we look at the extensions, now, okay, if we look at 1.618, so what I'm expecting, well, what I'm hoping for, what I'm actually hoping for is a move up to, so a 5-wave move, so something like like this and like this and like this. Okay, so something like that. Okay, probably faster than that, but something like that. Okay, which is going to move up to around $250,000. Okay. And then it will have a wave 4 and then another move up. And when that next move goes up, well, you're looking more like, I don't know, I would guess 600, anywhere, well, probably going up to about $1 million a coin. That's a lot of money, isn't it? Yeah, it is. You can see why I stopped day trading, because I don't need to. I mean, I got enough I don't really need to worry about trying to make money on a daily basis. I simply have money, and Bitcoin, it does what it does, and I don't have to worry about money. It will make enough money for me, basically. But obviously, not everyone's in my obviously, your situation might be a lot different than mine, and I get that. I was a time when when I first started trading Bitcoin. I started off with I don't know, it was about 5 or 10,000 pounds. Um, it wasn't a lot of money that I had, and I did make some huge profits, and I made some huge losses. Yeah, it was a roller coaster ride. There was one day I managed to turn about $500 of Bitcoin into about $20,000 of Bitcoin on Bitcoin futures, and not long after that, I lost all of it. So, yeah, I mean, I've done some real scary shit, basically. And but it was, it was exciting. I won't lie, it was exciting. Um, yeah, get rid of that. Okay, so this this move up, I would expect it to go up faster than that. So probably let me hang on. Let me stretch this. So yeah, like I said, it's at a very critical moment at where it is right now. So if we look at look on the maybe the daily, oh well, look at the 4 hour chart. Okay, so you can see it's had a bounce. It's moved up. It's doing like a little corrective sideways movement. Has it what exactly is this gonna do? Let's look at the 1 hour. So here's the 1 hour. Okay. So you can see it's going sideways. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm not that concerned what it's doing in the short run. I'm not, trying to scalp or day trade Bitcoin or anything like that. What do I expect to happen here? Well, you got this, you can call this like it's a fast moving wave, and we got some sideways movement, right? And then it could go up again, and it could maybe come back down again, and it could go back up. But, I think, the bottom, this, I expect this to be a very strong support level. Okay. I expect this to be a very strong support level. That's what I expect. Okay. I mean, I've read, I've watched a couple of people's videos on YouTube recently, and they've been talking about, there've been a lot of people, um, they're shocked that Bitcoin has fallen so much, and some people are, obviously, you got people who are bullish. They're saying buy now, buy now. You got people who are, not so optimistic. Yeah, I'm very optimistic. Personally. So like I said, obviously I've added these indicators, so the moving averages, okay? So on the 1 hour chart, we can see that prices, it's moving up to the 200 moving average, okay? So let's take a look at the 2 hour chart. Okay, so this is what it looks like on the 2 hour chart. Let me just increase the size here. So so you can see, obviously, if if we're looking at the 2 hour chart, probably what we'll see is, this price will move. It'll probably come up. It'll probably touch the 200 moving average. it might get close, it might touch it, and then maybe, price will come back down a little bit, give it a bit of time, and once it comfortably moves above the 200 moving average, then probably we're going to see prices take off. But I pretty much think this is the bottom. This is, I don't really see how it's going to go much lower than that. This it's had its drop, and this is, people are just sort of figuring out, okay, well, what's going on with Bitcoin? Is it going down or is it going up? And people are buying and people are unsure, but it's it's working itself out. Okay, I don't think there's much to worry about downside. I think but like I said, so if we look at try the 4 hour, okay, so here's the 4 hour. So you can see you can see that you can see where it is right now. It's correcting, and you can see there's the 20 moving average. It's right there. Yeah. Okay, so it's going around, and obviously the 50 moving average is coming down here. So and like I said, price might come up. It might maybe it probably maybe we'll see price shoot up to about, I don't know, 80,000 or 77,000 or something like that. And then maybe, it'll come back down a little bit. Maybe see something like that. Will it break that low? Will it maybe, I don't think so, to be honest. If it does, it might just do it very, like a very small amount. I don't really see it going that much lower. Is there anything else I want to talk about? Yeah, one thing I should say. So Bitcoin, you'll see very often you get head and shoulders patterns, right? So sometimes they'll be flat like that, right? So that's a head and shoulders pattern. If you don't know anything about head and shoulders patterns, go look at that. Go have a look at that on yeah, I mean, just go look at it, right? You'll often see these patterns. If you see on Bitcoin, you'll see them a lot. It's a pattern that repeats a lot in Bitcoin. Okay. They can be upside down, they can be at different angles. So just look out for them. Okay. I mean, I could maybe look at a quick example. If we go to the 1 day chart, like a basic example. Yeah, I mean, this is like, yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, even if you look at it from this, right? So you could maybe call this a head and shoulders, right? Inverse, so you got a shoulder here, the head, and then another shoulder there. It's upside down. And then it had the breakout. Yeah. Let me get rid of that. Okay. So, yeah. And it's interesting because obviously, price went up and it came back in this area, right? And so, price went up, didn't it? Obviously, it went up here, it came up, it came back down again, and here we are. We're back in this range. Yeah, this range. And so all this price is doing, it's just retesting this area. It's found support. This is a good support area. Like I said on the on my old chart, I showed that I showed the curve. Let me get rid of this. No, not that, not that. Get rid of that. I want to get rid of the drawing. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So the curve, right? So if I go to is it in, where is it? There. Here's the curve, okay? So where do I want to start? Well, I guess you would start it at 0 really, but let me just, oh shit, hang on. Oh, what's going on here? Hang on. Try that again. Oh, for fuck's sake. Sorry. My phone keeps falling over. Whatever. Sorry about that. So the curve. I'm basically just expecting, it's a parabolic curve, right? I mean, obviously you can see, right? I mean, I haven't adjusted this curve yet, but if I just put it on like that, right? I mean, look where it is, right? I mean, obviously this is at, well, it's a bit low actually. Set it at 0. And then, obviously, well, set that there. Yeah. I mean, this is, what is Bitcoin doing? Well, it's following a curve, isn't it? Obviously. There's some sort of curve that's happening here, right? I mean, what else would you expect? Right? What else would you expect? I mean, look at this. Right? This was this move up to 20,000 that was back here. That obviously it followed a curve. That's what you see on commodities. If you look at gold, you'd see the same thing. It follows a curve, right? That's that's what people would expect. That's usually how it goes. That's what I expect. So, I expect, this is, we got wave 1, we got wave 2, which is finished really high, at 60,000. Wave 1, the top of wave 1 was 20,000, about 20,000. Wave 2 decided to go completely bonkers, and it finished at about 60,000. Where's it going to go next? Well, it's going to go to about, I would say, about $250,000. And then it will have another correction. Yeah, it will have the wave 4, right? But the wave 4, it will be shorter than this wave 2. This wave 2 took a really long time. Yeah, wave 4 will be a lot shorter. So, what would let me do a drawing. So, I'm probably going to need to change my time frame here. Stick it to 1 week. That'll do. So, obviously there's this curve. Right, let me try to fit this on the screen. Okay, so imagine this curve, it keeps going up. Right, let's draw the curve, right? So, something like, not like that. That's really shit. Hang on. A curve like this, right? Something like that. Okay. And I'll change the color of that to blue, just to make it match. And get rid of that, get rid of that, get fuck's sake. Sorry. Yeah, it's very fiddly. Oh, that's not what I want. Here, get rid of the purple one. Stupid. Oh, come on. Give me a... Or whatever. You know what I mean? Just... Come on, man. Why is it keep... You can tell I don't use this software very often. Why is the... Why the fuck did that move? Hang on. Put that back here. Right. Just ignore the purple bit. It doesn't fucking matter. Alright. So what do I expect next? Okay, so I expect a move up. Right, so let me start this again. Okay, so I'm expecting a big move to come up. You probably see it come up to about, you know, this sort of level. So about 120,000. Yeah, and then you probably see it, you know, move sideways a bit, and then it'll come back up again, right? You know, and it'll probably, you know, probably something like this, right? Something like that. But let's put that in a different color. Let's put that in purple, right? And for some reason that bit's blue. That's really fucking annoying. I'm really not... right, look, I'll just draw over it just to save myself time here. Okay? So, you know, I'm expecting a big move up, right? And then, obviously, when it gets up here, you know, you have a big wave 4, right? You know, probably something like that. And then it will shoot off again. And it'll go a lot higher. And it's going to follow a curve, right? It will keep... you know, it might break that, you know, maybe when it gets to wave 4, it might break that curve. It might come out a bit, but then, you know, obviously it will follow a new curve, right? You know, whether it does that or not, it doesn't really matter at this point. I mean, you know, I just want to see Bitcoin go up to 250,000. So, you know, if I, can I close that here? Get rid of that. Right, so let me have another. So, if I change, so let's put it on the 2 week. So, you know, you can see, I mean, if you look at it, it's a parabolic climb. Yeah. I know it's not a very good drawing. Could be better, right? But see, can I get this thing to move? Right, but just pull this out a bit. Right, so, you know, I expect, you know, price will hit the 1.618 for wave 3, expected to hit about the 1.618 extension, so probably about $260,000, right? And then it's going to move sideways for wave 4, and then it's going to take off like a rocket. It'll probably go, yeah, I mean, that's the most, the wave 5 is the most explosive. It's the most, it's the fastest moving wave you'll see in Bitcoin. And commodities, it's like gold. If you look at gold, well, what do you see of gold? It's had a massive move up. That's its wave 5. And that's the wave that it will go up the most. But that's where it tops out, and it will come back down again. So, and, you know, with Bitcoin, well, we're just getting started. You know, we had the 20,000 wave 1. Wave 2 finished at probably about 60,000. You know, wave 3 probably going to go up to 250, 260,000 probably. Then you get a wave 4 correction that'll go on for a while. It'll go sideways for a while, and then it'll take off again. Okay, and so you probably see, you know, if I tell you what, if I do the extension thing again, right? So let's say using this wave extension. So what I would do is I would say, okay, well, prices, it'll probably go up to about, let's say about 260, about 260, 267. Okay, so about there. The pullback won't be that, because it's a wave forward. It'll probably be about somewhere around there, and then you'll have an extension, and that extension will be, well, it'll probably be more about 2 or 2.618. So you'll probably see price, it will come up really, really fast. It'll probably, it will come up very fast. So you're looking at, it's going to come up like, it will just fly. It will come up really hard. It will go up very aggressively. Okay? And so, obviously, the $1 million per Bitcoin is, obviously it's a major psychological level, psychological barrier, I suppose. A lot of people, when it starts to approach $1 million, people are going to be like, yeah, maybe it's getting close to the time to sell, because obviously, well, it's a very significant level, isn't it? Obviously. And what would happen after that? Well, you'd probably see, it'll probably come back down. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't, how far, or, what's going to happen after that. Potentially price could come all the way back down to 200,000, 100,000 before it takes off again. After it really depends. It's not easy to say what will happen to Bitcoin after it hits that high. It might stay high for really long. It might just be like this for ages. And obviously, it could go sideways like that for decades. Or it could come lower. And then take off again. Right? It could do all sorts of stuff. But obviously, that's way in the future. Why worry about that now? The fact is that, money, a lot of money is going to go into Bitcoin. And it's going to go up. That's my opinion. If you like that, cool. If you don't, whatever. That's you're allowed to have your opinion, and I'm allowed to have mine. And I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and you will do what you will do. This is all, I'm just trying to educate you and show you what I know. Oh, yeah. Yeah, these, obviously, people have different ways of looking at charts. I use I use the candlesticks. These are like Japanese. They call them Japanese candlesticks, don't they? Well, that's where they originated from. If you don't know how those work, well, you need to go back to the. You need to learn the basics, really. Yeah. I would hope you would know that stuff. I mean, that's very basic stuff. I'm not here to, I'm not trying to explain to people who have put zero effort into learning how to trade. Obviously, I'm just trying to show more advanced Um, I'm trying to explain my advanced methods, how I do it. I'm not trying to explain everything here. So, obviously, if you want to figure things out, feel free. Obviously, I didn't want to make this video too long. Is there anything else I really want to add to this video? Yeah, yeah, I mean, in the future, I'm probably gonna, I'm keeping, normally I don't pay much attention to Bitcoin, especially for the last few years, I've really not paid much attention to it at all. It's at a very interesting point at the moment, so this is why I'm looking at it, and this is why I'm talking about it. And I might as well share some knowledge while I'm at it, right? I mean, obviously, I think a lot of people who like to trade cryptocurrencies, they like to trade between different altcoins, or, they'll do, Bitcoin versus Ethereum, or, various other digital currencies or cryptocurrencies. I don't do that. Those charts look very different, don't they? Obviously, I like looking at, my favorite charts to look at are, it's the digital currency, or Bitcoin, in my opinion, it behaves like a commodity. Okay. That's how it behaves. That is the patterns. That's what I see with Bitcoin. It's very, it's very valuable. And it's very valuable technology. It's very valuable for lots of reasons. I mean, I don't want to get into why it's valuable. People will argue and say why it's valuable or not valuable. Excuse me. Oh, come on. My lighter's not... Hang on. It's gonna work. I need to buy a new lighter. Yeah. So, I mean, the thing is, right, obviously, prices at about $60,000. Let's say, if, for instance, if you put $10,000 in, it could be worth 10 times that, it's 10,000, in the next 10 years, you can make a lot of money. It could be a life-changing amount of money. Yeah. Yeah, and another thing, obviously, if you do have Bitcoin, obviously some people, they get worried about losing their Bitcoin or stuff like that. I mean, there are some good, there's a hardware wallet. It's called Ledger Stacks, and they're quite expensive, Ledger Stacks, but I think Ledger, they do an insurance thing. So if you pay them a subscription, they insure you against loss. They'll cover you for about 50,000. So that's it's a good option, but obviously, be smart about what you do. Don't do anything dumb. I mean, oh well. I mean, obviously, I've talked about Bitcoin. I mean, what you're going to see with, Ethereum or the other altcoins. Well, do I even want to look? Go on, we'll have a quick look at Ethereum then. So this is on Binance. So what's Ethereum doing? I haven't looked at this in a long, long time. Yeah, this looks, like I was saying with the wave count on Bitcoin, it's hard to say what this will do. But I would say there's two options here, right? So either it will do something similar to Bitcoin, or I think probably what this is that I think Ethereum is at a different stage right now. So you have the wave, so you could call this wave one, and this is a complex wave two, this is a crazy looking wave two as well, right? So it's got, you've got like you could call that an A, and then you've got another A, B, C, something like that, and then it'll probably move down again. So you basically get like, this crazy looking correction, and then probably it'll take off like that. So, I think really it's better to be in Bitcoin right now rather than Ethereum. That's not to say that Ethereum couldn't follow Bitcoin, but personally I think, Bitcoin's number one. Ethereum is, it will make money, but I don't think it's gonna, I think when Bitcoin takes off like a rocket, and I think I've seen this before, is that Ethereum, it tends not, obviously when Bitcoin's doing really, really well, Ethereum, it lags behind a bit, I would say. That's quite possible. I couldn't say that for certain. I don't really pay much attention to it really. But that's the impression I'm getting, right? That's what I'm thinking. That's just my, my quick thought on that. Obviously I think people use, they like, the digital contracts and, access to all these other platforms and blah de blah. I haven't messed around with any of that stuff. People want to go on all these weird exchanges and stuff like that, and yeah, I don't use any of that at all. I mean, I could have done if I wanted to, but I just never bothered. I certainly didn't have the time for it, and to be quite honest, Bitcoin is my prep. I prefer Bitcoin. So yeah, I think this video has been long enough. I don't know if there's anything else I want to add here. But yeah, no, maybe just for the sake of completeness, right? So obviously I've drawn all this, so let me put my final prediction for a wave count, right? So just to keep it, just to complete what I've been trying to explain. So Elliott wave impulse. So it was, so obviously it starts at about 0, wherever that is, and you got the 1 there and 2 there, and that would be 3, and that would be about 4 there, and then you'd have 5, which would be up about there. Okay, so that would be the wave count. So it went up to 20,000, Then it went into a crazy wave 2, a complex correction, a W, X, Y, X, Z. And it's probably finished about now. So that's wave 2 over with. It's going to go up to probably about 250-ish, 260-ish $1,000. And, expect a correction that will probably stay above $200,000 and then move up to above 750,000. In my opinion, it'll probably go past 750,000, and could even get close to $1 million a coin. Okay, and that is my short-term and long-term analysis of Bitcoin, right? I've told you what I think is going to happen in the near future, and I've explained how things should go into the future. And obviously, obviously, like I said, there's a curve, right, that's being followed, right? So, where, obviously that curve, when's it going to top out? If this is going to go up to, say, 250,000, well, how fast is that going to happen? Well, I think, yeah, it's going to be over the next couple of years, right? You got, so it's 2026 right now, obviously going into 2028, 2029, 2030. So, this is, this upward move, it could take 5 years, 4 years, it could be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, anything like that, right? So this is all long term, and obviously, while my Bitcoin is making me a lot of money, I'm gonna want to go traveling. I'm gonna want to go have some fun. I won't have to worry about where my money's coming from. All I have to do is just watch my money grow, and that'll be that. Is there anything else? Yeah. Yeah. But, so like I said, there's the simple moving averages, 20, 50, 100, and 200. Very useful indicators, okay? Whoops. If I switch those off? Oh. No, hang on. Yeah, they're already on. They're very useful indicators. That and Elliott wave theory. Elliott wave theory is my favorite. If you're going to trade a chart like this, so if you trade commodities, it's very, very useful. And it can be useful for other trades as well, right? So if you're looking, it's all about pattern recognition. It's, you want to know what part, where, when you're looking at a chart, you want to know what sort of patterns are forming and why the market is behaving the way it's behaving, right? The reason the market follows patterns is because, well, it's all about, I guess you could call it psychology, right? Market psychology, people think in a certain way, right? People get very bullish on something, and then, people get, fearful, people, they go all over the place, right? There's, there are patterns that repeat again and again and again and again and again. So, and it can be really hard to use Elliott wave theory, because sometimes you'll look at the chart and you'll think, well, is it this pattern or is it that pattern? And you might see two different patterns, or you might see three different patterns, right? You might start, you might, it can get very confusing, believe me. And, it's, risk management is so important. If you're a trader, you have to really be careful. You really have to be careful. Um, I mean, why did I get into trading? Well, because I was very unhappy with my life, and I was happy to take a huge risk. I was I was at a point in my life where I was so unhappy, and I felt like, well, I might as well, if I've got an opportunity to roll the dice, then why don't I do that? And that's one of the reasons why I took huge risks, is because I was willing to put everything on the line. And I made some very interesting decisions, but obviously I don't recommend doing that. I recommend being smart, being careful. um, that's what I recommend. um, Obviously you're not me, you're you. I do what I do, you can do what you want to do. um, your life is your life, and you'll make your decisions, I'll make my decisions, obviously. So leave it at that. um, yeah, I don't think there's anything else I really need to say. um, my advice is, if you are a trader, learn Elliott wave theory, because it is the best um, way of understanding patterns. There's a lot of junk out there, believe me. There's so many people out there who try to sell trading courses, and they do all sorts of crap technical analysis, and it's all, they put out a lot of junk, and they get people to buy it. That guy Anil Mangal, never paid the guy any money ever. I learned a lot from his free videos, and I figured it out by reading um uh I found most of the information for free. um the moving averages, I used to subscribe to a guy's there was a subscription service that I used, a guy who used to do like a Bitcoin blog, Bitcoin analysis, and he would use the moving averages, and yeah, they are really useful. But Elliott wave theory is definitely the best, in my opinion. But the fact is, it takes a lot of experience to know how to use it. So that's why I've explained to you my count. If you won't see that count anywhere else. Trust me. I don't think you will see that. I doubt if you go look at other people's Elliott wave counts on Bitcoin for the long term, right? Looking at what I'm showing you, you won't see that. You won't see people count it that way, because there are lots of people who don't know how to count properly. They break the rules. They don't follow the rules properly. And the thing is, if you go out and you actually read um the rules for Elliott wave theory, well, it will, you could read maybe a couple of different books on it, or read it on a few different websites, or learn from different videos about it. But you have to understand that Bitcoin is very unique. It's very bullish. And you have to understand as well, right? Because, you know, before Bitcoin became a thing, traders, I mean, think about it. You think of all the novice traders who are now involved in trading Bitcoin, right? You think how many people who are novices have gotten into who have taken up, who have decided to become, day traders or, trading on the side, to make a bit of money. Obviously, since Bitcoin got introduced and other cryptocurrencies, things have changed quite a lot, haven't they? So, what this is a wave two, which is all it is showing is that people are buying up in the correction. So even when it's in a really long-term correction, people are still buying it up, buying it up. All this is a signal that the next move up is going to be enormous. So obviously, right now, obviously, if it's about $60,000, well, it's at $70,000 right now. It could come back down to 60-ish thousand dollars. But it's at $70,000. It could go up times 10 over the next several years, right? So that's my opinion. If you like it, you can, yeah, if you agree with it, you agree. If you don't, you don't. Okay, I've explained it as best as I can. I'll leave it there. Okay.